Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl and welcome to Turkey. Thomas asked me how I would feel about taking the CX-60 on a 1,000 kilometer trip across the east side of Turkey. Wow. Well, two things for you. First of all, Turkey roads, always an interesting combination. And secondly, the CX-60, this one is a hybrid. So how's that going to cope with 1,000 miles of driving on my back and enjoyment of this car? Mazda, for me, synonymous with fun, small, dynamic, sporty vehicles. This, the most powerful engine that they've produced so far. 330 horsepower of get up and go. So what's it going to do once we put it on these roads? Now, 4.75 meters or 187 inches. This is not a small car. Make it a hybrid, you're adding a lot of weight for those batteries, and you kind of do have to wonder, how is the handling going to behave? You can get between 18 and 20-inch rims for this. This, of course, has the bigger ones fitted, so more aesthetically pleasing, but possibly a little bit less comfortable to drive. I don't want to keep going on about my back, but I'm not young anymore. Part of the fun of taking a car like this on such a long drive over such a short space of time is you really do get a strong sense of exactly what it's like to own. Let's take a look and see what's going to be powering us through Turkey. This is the eSkyActiv PHEV. I know Thomas says PHEV, I'm a PHEV guy, that's how it is. That is a 2.5 litre petrol engine, 4-cylinder, producing a combined output of 330 horsepower. And you can also get this as a 3-litre petrol or a 3.3 litre diesel with a 6-cylinder engine. But this guy is paired with an 18 kilowatt hour battery that gives you a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour speed of 5.8 seconds. If you're wondering what that does in terms of charging, 7.2 kilowatts is the charging speed. Well, we just put the fear of God into the Mazda guys. They just saw us halfway up the side of a mountain with our bonnet lifted up so we could show you guys the engine. I think they thought we might be having a spot of bother. Well, no worries. Hopefully we know what we're doing. So talking of which, I think you can safely say that Mazda kind of do as well. They've really nailed the interior cockpit design of this. I'm a bit disappointed to say that the seats don't come at the top end in anything other than leather. It's nice to have a few different options, but the styling and the finish of the cockpit is really nice indeed. It's sleek, it's modern, it's not overstated, but similarly, there are enough small design details just to make you feel that you're in something a bit special. Look at this stitching, for example. That really does speak not only to the heritage of the brand, but also to the style of the CX-60. That kind of resonates right throughout the front. It just makes you feel good about being in here. That design detail and attention to fabrics and materials is carried on right throughout the front door. Just look at the way this is finished. It just makes you feel good. It's really nice. But thank you for not forgetting practicalities. Even though this looks like a slim pocket, as you can see, it will hold a half-litre bottle more than comfortably. Great! So, I love the way it looks. How does it feel when you get in? Let's find out. Well, my first surprise about this car is how narrow the seats feel. You have masses of width here, but a huge amount of that space is taken up by this, the enormous central console. Now, obviously, we have some things in here we need for our off-roading adventures, but you get the general idea of the overall depth of this thing, and clearly that limits the amount of space that's available for the driver. But that said, the seat is firm and comfortable, the drive position is good. I have this seat in its lowest height. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, and as you can see, I have lots of room here. If you're thinking, well, you should have a lot more at that height, that's because I have very short legs and a very long torso. Consequently, the seat's very far forwards, and for height comparison, unbelievably, I come off around about the same as a guy who's 6'2" when I'm sitting down. I know, strange, right? Brexit. Anyway, as we look at the car, to get more of an overview as to how your driving experience sits, everything here feels good, solid, and poised. I'm kind of tempted to switch the engine on and see what happens when everything lights up. I want to start by showing you the different layouts that you can have on the driver display. As you can see, there's a really nice subtle change that takes place. I love the animation, and I love the way in which that display changes so quickly and so cleanly from one driving mode to another. Those colors are really great and useful, because if you hop into the car and forget to switch that mode, you will instantly recognize it thanks to the color signature the minute that you switch the car on. Now let's take a look at the 12.3-inch infotainment screen. Now, as you can see, because I'm stationary right now, I can use the screen as a touch screen. But as soon as you start driving for safety, you're not going to be able to do that. All of the controls for your infotainment system are accessed through here. But thank you, Mazda. They've also included for us over here our very own manual volume control and skip function for the infotainment system. Great, really nice feature. Only slight oddity of this so far is this gear stick. As you can see, what's quite unusual is that the P is over here on the left, and there is also a catch in the front that you have to pull in order to push it over there. So if you want to put it over into drive, you have to depress the button, move it over, and pull it down. Now, without a doubt, that does make it safer, but it is a bit of an extra faff, especially because we have the locking button up top. So I think I probably would just have had it in line with everything else. Now the rear. Well, as you can see, the styling continues back here. And obviously, if you're interested in one of these over its smaller brother, the CX-5, a large part of that's going to be because of the space on offer. Well, there's not as much space back here as I might expect. This seat is set for me to drive. I have very short legs, so this is not really representative. If I move over, you can see the available space behind Cornelius. Again, I have very short legs. So if you're about 6 foot, you're going to be quite compact in here, but plenty of headspace. You could be nice and comfortable back here. There's Isofix on both sides for children's seats. So plenty of room and plenty of comfort for rear seat passengers. And they haven't stopped there. In this car, you also have rear seat heating and 2 USB-C charge points and your very own rear seat 12-volt power control. 570 or 1,730 litres of load space is what you're going to get back in the CX-60. And if you're wondering how much more that is than the CX-5, it's an additional 50 litres. All of the seats fold down, and I'm just going to show you that quickly from the back so you can get a sense of how deep that load space is. Now, you can see, so this seat's set for Cornelius, and that now means that I can't actually easily fit this down. So I'm going to go around the other side to show you how those seats look when they fold flat. And that does give you an interesting idea of how, despite being bigger, it certainly isn't enormous, but it does have more than enough space. So if I fold these down, there we go. That is as flat as they're going to get. So it's not quite a flat load floor, and it won't take everything completely flatly, but as you can see, there's an enormous amount of space here, and really pretty much enough for anything you could want to fit in the back. So enough talking, let's get to doing some driving. When they first launched the CX-60, I was really keen to see what they do with it, and like everybody else, I was queuing up to watch Thomas's review, largely because this to me is neither fish nor fowl. It's not quite a classic Mazda. When I think of Mazda, I think efficient, I think fun. Really, that's the first word I would always go for with Mazda. Good value for money, and really small. I mean, like everybody else, the iconic Mazda for me is the MX-5, and I look to see everything else measured off that yardstick. So, this is the most powerful Mazda that they've produced. This one in particular has a 4-cylinder, 2.5 litre petrol engine paired with an electric platform, and that gives you a combined output of 330 horsepower. So, you know, that's nothing to feel sad about. Certainly it has a 0 to 100 time of 5.8 seconds, and that's not too shabby at all. But do I want or need that in an SUV? Well, sure. Can you ever truly have more of those Turkish roads? Can you ever really have too much power in a car? Well, if you want an answer to that, you should probably go ahead and watch our Lucid review. But for here, I think that's going to turn out to be more than enough for an SUV. Now, this would be a brilliant intersection with literally no markings at all. Great. Loving Turkish roads already. For those of you who are fans of geography, we are just on the east side. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to maybe inset a little map to show you exactly where we are. But this is a part that is significantly less travelled than the bits that European visitors at least standardly go to. And that's great in driving terms because you really do get to see a little bit more about how the car itself will perform. Talking of the car, two main objectives. One with the mixed terrain. Is this really capable of doing off-road? I can't even count the amount of cars that I've sat in that were SUVs, definitely geared and ready for off-road use, that really weren't. Now, the first impression I get when I look at this car is, come on, this is a larger than average commuter designed to take families. You can go away for weekends with this and fit all your gear in the back, you're going to be happy. But off-road, that doesn't leap at me for this car, so I'm quite pleased to be able to take it mixed terrain and see what it really can deliver. That's the first thing. Secondly, and really important, this review is designed for people who are thinking about buying this car and want to know, but what's it like when you use it in the long term? Now, standardly when we get a car for a review, we can have it anywhere from 2 hours to maybe 8, and we're certainly not throwing down 1,000 kilometers on it. This is a lot of distance over a very short time. So the idea behind this is we're going to live with this car and see if we end the journey hating it, loving it, or something in the middle. So at the moment I remain very open-minded. I don't have massive expectations, either good or bad, of this car. I have to tell you, I'm not instantly in love with it. The main reason for that is it's not my preferred class of vehicle. That's problem one. Problem two, the CX-5 is such a great car. It's almost perfectly nailed everything, and I think it's as big as an SUV usually really gets without starting to challenge the way in which the drive handles. Right off the bat, when you drive this car, you feel that extra size. I would really have liked to have tried this with the 6-cylinder petrol, because then you would have saved a lot of weight and you would have got more of a sense of the drive dynamic. This car feels off the bat a little bit lumpy. Now, I don't want to be unfair. This is 7 inches longer than the CX-5. That's about 17 centimeters. And clearly that's going to have a massive impact on the drive. Not only that, but you have the batteries for the electric platform, and that adds a significant amount of weight. And that's always a huge challenge when you're deciding how to tool up the suspension and the handling. If you go for too stiff and too direct, it doesn't make it comfortable for around town. If you want it to comfortable and reassuring, then it tends to be a bit floaty and unresponsive. Now that for me is where this car sits from the get-go. We're driving around fairly standard rolls, but with nice craterous potholes, and as Cornelius pointed out earlier, some slightly less than fairly marked speed bumps, and that does give me a really good chance to test the suspension. I wouldn't say that I don't like it, it just doesn't feel particularly direct. A little bit later on, we're going to test out those different driving modes to see what impact that makes to the handling of the car. But right off the bat, I would say that if what you're looking for is something that is direct and responsive immediately and aggressive, which you might find in one of the German competitors for this, you're not going to be experiencing that immediately in the drive. If you like something more comfortable and reassuring, you will be finding that. This feels rather a lot like driving around in your front room, if that makes any sense at all. The cabin space is huge, and I've got lots of room, but there are contradictions, as there always are in SUVs. I have a huge center console in the middle, and that means that even though I have much mentioned tiny legs, they don't feel like they have a huge amount of room to move around. Yeah, I've got huge amounts of room for my elbows, but that's all taken up with this center console, and over here, this door. Now, at my height and with my torso, this door is great for my arm and my shoulder. This is at the perfect height. I have the seat on the lowest setting. I like to sit deep within the bed of the vehicle to really give me a sense of it. And here I'm very comfortable indeed, but all people's geometry is slightly different. So have a seat in the car and tell me what you think when you do, because I find it comfortable, but if I was going to buy one of these, this center console would concern me. It just does take up an awful lot of room, and it doesn't make it massively comfortable, especially for people with long legs. And that's an interesting bit of driving. Great. So that's first driving impressions as we go through town here. I guess I would say this car feels more than assured. It's perfectly capable of dealing with everything that town driving is going to give you. I like the elevated road position. That extra size definitely does give you more presence on the road and makes you feel that you're supposed to be here, I suppose, is the best way that I can put it. But it is missing a little bit of Mazda sparkle. And I'm going to dig a little bit deeper to see if I can find where they hid it. Well, for me, it's a little bit like literally driving a mattress. I feel like I'm sitting on top of a bed, and not in a good floaty way like with good Mercedes air suspension, but literally like driving on top of a mattress. I don't feel connected to the drive, and I understand why Mazda have done that. Clearly it makes the car more comfortable, and we'll find out whether there's a really good reason for that over 1,000 kilometers. But for everyday use, for me, it's not nearly direct and responsive enough. This feels much more like how I would expect the car to handle and drive if I had it in comfort. Well, there is no comfort mode on this car, but that's how this feels. A little spongy, a little unresponsive. What happens if I put my foot down and then the car gives me everything it has? Well, 70-kilometer limit here, so I'm not really going to be able to do this for very long, but I'm keen to see what happens. The local guys don't seem to be concerned with the speed limits. Let's find out. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I think that's really about 3 full seconds to get the full response out of the car. I don't think that's really great for standard mode. Again, I would expect that in comfort or efficient. For everyday use even, I want to get a quick access to that power point, and I understand in doing that I'm increasing the efficiency of the car by delaying it and saying, do you really want the power? But it does just reinforce the feeling of me not being connected completely with how this car drives. But don't worry, we have a sports mode, and I'm going to take a look at that now and see how that behaves. So the mode access, I would have liked if they'd done a little bit of a better job with this button, either putting it directly on the steering wheel or just making it nicer for you to access easily. I'm sure over time you can find it straight away, but I had to look down, and I never ever like anything on a car that makes me take my eyes off the road. So once you've done it though, selecting your mode, very simple. It's just up or down, and just like that I'm in sport. Well, we're going to find out more about that when I put my foot down, so let's see what happens then. Okay, that's more like a 1 second wait for response, and immediately you get the benefit of that 5.8 second acceleration from 0 to 100. I'm not completely convinced by the engine noise, you know. I like the start of it, but it takes a while to taper off on the back end, and I can't help but think that what they're trying to do is to give you in some way some of that 6-cylinder experience in a 4-cylinder car, and rather like a fake exhaust. I just don't know how I feel about being lied to by my car on a daily basis, but I'm being really overly picky there. Hats off to Mazda. They've done one thing that I really like with the interior design here. This whole touchscreen, although it is active when you're stationary, you can't use it when you're driving, and I think that's a really good idea. The way they've handled that is with this big knob down here. Now, I don't know if Cornelius can do a cut away from our interior to show you that, but in practical terms, it's very straightforward. You can scroll through options without needing to get distracted. For the most time, you have the information you already need, which is your navigation in the middle and then any media that you're playing on the left. Thank you again for giving me manual controls to the stereo, which you can access either through the small knob to the right of the navigation knob, or of course through steering wheel controls, which, guess what, are still buttons. Hooray! Now, I guess there's two things you can say about that. The one is, well, Mazda is still thinking about what the customer actually wants, but that's being a little bit generous. My suspicion is that their market research has told them that their target customer for this vehicle, I'm sad to say I'm probably in that age group, is probably my age and older. They want more space, they want more comfort. That would explain the settings for the suspension, and it would also explain these nice solid real buttons everywhere. you know what? I also can't help but wonder, is that what is causing the choice of launching a hybrid in an age in which everybody else is doing pure electric? I wonder if Mazda are still holding off on that because they feel their customers just aren't ready to make that leap with them yet in this segment. This is an expensive vehicle. Therefore, they're saying, well, what is it our customers want? Our customers are older. They're not ready to make that leap. They're still a little bit frightened about range. Or is it because Mazda simply don't have a platform for an electric basis ready to go forwards with yet? I guess it's probably likely a combination of those factors. But either way, I might not be immediately in love with the concept of a plug-in hybrid, but I'm so happy to drive something that still has knobs and buttons for me to play with. What can I say? I guess I'm the right market segment for this car. Cornelius and I have both commented, here's a nice bend, that the seats are not great for holding you in place. There's not much in the way of bolster side supports and nothing at all in the body. Now I think that's because even though you have a hugely wide cabin, because of the dynamics of that central tunnel, you don't have a huge amount of space for these seats. So they haven't put in what you would describe as particularly sport seating. These are a fairly high-end version of the seats. They're covered in leather. They're very comfortable to sit on, but they certainly don't feel like driver's seats. The lane keeping assist, let's do a bit of wandering right now. Okay, well, we all have to get a bit more used to this as the era of autonomous driving, there we go, comes upon us. But the problem that I have with this system is its lack of consistency. Sometimes it very aggressively takes control of the car and puts it back, and it was in fact so annoying earlier on, the vibration of the steering wheel when I was not going over a line, because as you can imagine in Turkey the lines aren't always that clear on the road, which is just as much of a problem for the car's systems as it is for you as a driver. But sometimes it doesn't care when you're going over a line, and that's a problem because any system you put on a car has to be consistent and reliable. Well, as you should be able to see, we are parked on a hill. We're just about to get going, but I really want to show you this hill park assist. It's great. This is a modern feature on cars that I really love. It's not always perfectly executed. In this Mazda, it's really, really good. It's intuitive, it's straightforward. As you can see, or maybe you can't, but I'm now in drive. The parking brake is off, but I'm being held here perfectly, ready for me to apply the accelerator. And there you go, really seamless. If you live somewhere hilly, that is a really nicely delivered feature. Now, let's check out that 5.8 second acceleration. Have a rolling start, because, you know, let's be fair. And here we go. Nice noise, nice delivery. And in sports mode, the car feels comfortable and poised. So 2 thumbs up for that, Mazda. That's actually a good job of making a lot of power feel like it's actually not that crazy. I got the acceleration I was after, but I didn't feel like I was having the back of my scalp ripped off while I was busy doing it, which is fitting to the car, I should stress. So I think they've really nicely got that balance right between power and comfort. So here we have some lovely winding mountain roads, and this is a perfect place to see how well equipped this car is to take on this kind of environment. And I'm finally happy to be able to tell you also the perfect place to allow you to listen to that noise. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? But I just don't want to drive listening to that all the time in a hybrid car. The only reason that I should be aware of my engine is if I have a beautiful, sonorous, powerful engine that is propelling me at breathtaking speeds. This is a hybrid. It just doesn't sit right for me, but I don't want to go on about it. Like, if you feel, no, come on, this is actually what I want, then please do let me know. And these mountain roads in Turkey are particularly interesting because they have a habit of changing terrain at a moment's notice, changing width, losing road markings, and doing everything else that can make the drive particularly fun. Well, I think it's fun anyway. But this is a good thing to have experienced because it means that there's quite a lot of fairly unexpected braking, lots of maneuvering, good chance to test out the steering and the handling. And the first thing that I really have to take my hat off to Mazda for is the build quality. I've been in so many new cars where rattles, shakes and bumps make themselves pretty evident the second you start throwing the car around. This is a big car, there's an awful lot to it. So I'd expect at least a few noises. And I'm happy to tell you that the only thing I can hear, other than that pitch of engine, is our equipment knocking backwards and forwards. This car build is solid. It's really pretty impressive. Do you agree, Cornelius?
Yes.
Now, the drive itself, excellent. For a big car, it's nimble, it's agile, and it handles itself nicely. So I can't really drive around these roads at quite the speed I might like to give it a try. One, because Cornelius has stuff to do when he gets home, so fishing him out of a ravine might take a bit too much out of our day. But two, because, well, it's not really the car for that, is it? But man, there's something about these roads that really makes you want to find out what the car can do. But I think they're going to get a little more challenging ahead. So while they're still pretty tame and easy to navigate, let's have a look and see how accessible the system is. You might remember me mentioning earlier, you cannot use the touchscreen while the car is in motion, and I'm a big fan of that. But what you can do is access the system through the big wheel in the middle. And there are a couple of the systems that I'm interested to see how adaptable they are. Now, obviously, safety first, you'd pull over and do this while you're not driving. So I'm only going to do what feels safe and right to me, and that is the test. I want to know how easy it is to navigate this system while I'm driving under somewhat challenging conditions. And needless to say, if the answer to that is, it just isn't good, then I'm going to stop doing it. So, let's access the system. Well, this throws up the first spotlight for me. You need to go to the home screen. For that, you would need to look down. Memory serves, I think it's bottom right underneath this wheel. There we go. Now, that's an interesting touch, isn't it? You can see from there it's kept the Android Auto screen open on the right-hand side, and it's offered me all of the options. Now, as you know, I'm a fan of keeping things safe and simple, so I'm not quite sure why I can access every single last feature that the car has direct through this menu. It might be adaptable that I can limit what I'm actually looking at. I think that would be a nice touch. Interestingly, the jog wheel does not allow you to pull down and go up. You actually have to cycle through all of the options. So to access the car's standard menu, you have to select Mazda. That's already a little bit of a step more than I would like, ideally. Once you've done that, you have a really clean interface here that allows for you to get, hopefully, directly where you need to be. I have to say, Cornelius, I've never done a test of an infotainment system while navigating through a rocky mountain pass before. I think it makes more fun. Are you now slightly terrified?
Yes.
Okay, that's the right answer. As I started by saying, I must stress I'm only doing this when it feels safe to do so. This road is properly incredible, but I don't want to go on about it too much. I get that we're pretty privileged to be here and to be driving around it, but you can't be here, and that kind of sucks. So I want to make life a bit harder for me, just so you appreciate that I get that fact. All right, so let's say that I want to look at the setup of the vehicle in particular. Now, I'm hoping that is something you cannot adjust and look at while you are driving, because if Mazda are committed to what they say they're committed to, which is safety first, that really isn't something you should be doing. Let's have a look. There's settings. Okay, it's pulled up the menu, no problem at all. And let's go to vehicle settings. Of course, the car does know that I'm off-road. Yep, no, looks to me like you can adjust everything fully while you're driving. So, I guess the test, pass and fail is what we can say here. A pass in that it's nice to know that I can get to everything I need, and the interface is very clean, and I can actually look at that without taking my focus off driving. Back on regular roads again and having some fun driving. Well, this car really appreciates a little bit more width. That's because, of course, of the additional weight, so you need more room to throw it around. But stick it in sport, give it a little extra width, and man, it's a lot more fun to drive than you might expect. It really does take good advantage of its driving dynamics. The brakes are nice, they're not quite as precise as you might like, but they deliver what you need when you want. And the steering is good too. Now, I think on the note of the steering, it's well worth noting that one of the assistance systems that this car comes with is driver alert, and that needs a lot more refinement. I can tell you that it has regularly gone off when I not only have both hands on the steering wheel, but my eyes firmly fixed on the road, and that's annoying. But what's more annoying is that earlier on when we were driving and a dog decided to run into the middle of the road ahead and just stand there, the radar did not detect it at all. So I could happily have driven over it at 120 kilometers per hour and no harm, no foul as far as the system's concerned. So if that's an option you're considering, I would say maybe leave that until a bit later. Now, talking of things to maybe leave until a little bit later, I would suggest that probably a number one reason for you looking at a hybrid model of the CX-60 is because you want a tax break, or that's what's available through your company. So you're going to want to know about fuel efficiency and whether or not that really does make sense. Well, we're pulling a lot of kilometers now, so I feel I'm in a good position to give you a combined system fuel usage. It's coming up at around about 9.8 litres for 100 kilometers driven. Honestly, I would like to see a little bit better than that. We have very mixed usage here, so off-road, fast driving, lots of hills, so pretty demanding on the system. But Mazda's attempt to give us an accurate expectation of what we can get out of this in terms of miles has been pretty much on the money. Around about 400 to 440 depending on terrain and use. Now, that's not bad, but it's not good enough to make me feel that I'm completely justified getting the hybrid. And not only that, of course I have all that extra weight from the batteries. I can't help but think I'm missing something in the drive because of that, and I'd love to have listened to that 6-cylinder petrol doing its thing. So test them both, see what you think, but unless you have a financial reason why it's hybrid for you, I think you might find yourself pulling slightly towards the petrol. So let's talk about the whole package. We are now just clocking over 1,000 miles, so we have put, 1,000 kilometers. So we have put some serious distance down on this thing, and some serious distance down on us as well. This is how I guess I would sum that experience up. These seats are actually great. Now, at first I was skeptical. They don't feel to me that comfortable to sit in. I don't appreciate the lack of lumbar support and side holding. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. If you are a larger customer, you might find that this doesn't really leave you enough room for sort of comfortable movement. But, and this is important, we've now put the time into this vehicle and we've driven on some really punishing surfaces for a long time, including roads that are not at their best. And I can say that my back still feels pretty great actually. And what's not usual for me is that I haven't had to make 400 adjustments to this seat while I've been driving. I put it into a position that felt good when we left. I haven't touched it since. It doesn't feel like the most comfortable seat that I've ever sat in, but 2 days and 1,000 kilometers tell me that it's actually pretty good. So I think the thing with the side holding has more to do with the general usability of the vehicle. The fact is, that does make the seat a lot easier and quicker to get in and out of. And again, that's going to appeal more in particular to an older customer base. They don't want to have to sit into the car. They just want to get in and drive and then get out. So apologies from me to Mazda. I actually think that was a really good choice. It suits the vehicle well. And most importantly, it delivers a good driving experience. Next up, build quality. I mentioned it before, gonna mention it again. Excellent. We have taken this thing through rocks, through rubble, through potholes. Nothing has shaken loose. Even Cornelius's camera equipment staying nice and quiet for that little soundbite. And I can tell you that the sound insulation in the cabin is really very good. Even when you're driving through challenging situations, you can still carry on a conversation completely comfortably. And you can hear what else is going on, which brings me on to the stereo. Now, Thomas has recently taken to putting little sound bites, but as the keen-eyed amongst you might be able to spot, that is quite heavily licensed music. So I'm not going to turn it on so you can hear. This car has the Bose sound system in it. Gotta tell you, little bit disappointing. The sound stage is good and it's broad, it's dynamic presentation, but it lacks bass and drive and clarity. And in a car of this type and profile, I would expect something that's going to make me go, wow, especially given how good this cabin insulation is. That's usually brings out the best detail in music when you play it, and it was just a bit lacking for me in this car. So before you make a selection on your infotainment system, check out everything that's available and see what you think. It's not that it's bad, it's just not that it's amazing either. You know what? That kind of sums up how I feel about this car. Now, the delight and the excitement that you get is when you can see just how much fun you can have in this in unexpected areas. Put it onto a nice wide road to give you enough space to deal with the throw out from the additional weight of the battery, and the handling in sports is actually crisp, taut, and fun. Yes, I said it, fun. Mazda, that's what they mean to me, and they're still delivering in this car. But for everyday use, well, I'm sorry guys, it comes as a second runner-up to the very, very competent CX-5. Why? Well, larger SUVs always struggle to find the balance and get it right between usability and enjoyment of drive. And I don't think that Mazda's gotten it wrong. There's just not quite enough to put that smile on your face the way that there is in those smaller Mazdas. So I think that this is a good entrance into this market segment. It's going to represent good value for money, it's going to hold its value, and you're not going to have a problem selling this on. And if the build quality, as we've experienced it, is representative of what you'll get as an owner, then I think you're going to be very happy with how this car delivers. The driver experience overall is really good. You're right at the center of the cockpit. Yes, there aren't a million things that you can change with the layout and the design, but why do you honestly need that anyway? You can adjust enough to make you happy, and Mazda have really done a good job of getting the 3 basic cockpit layouts for their driving modes to resonate, be quick and easy to read, and to be comfortable and nice to interact with. So I don't really want to see any change there. Infotainment, great, more than enough information, but it keeps itself out of my way, and I love the fact that you can interact with it yourself. Head-up display, brilliant. Just what you need in a car like this, good information, well delivered. So all in all, a really good package. But is it good enough to convince people to move over and get themselves a bigger SUV with Mazda this time? Well, I can't in all honesty say that it outperforms the competition, but you know what? It will beat them on price. So you're going to have to decide what sits best within your budget. But before you make your final decision, why not check out Thomas's driving review of the C60 and see what he has to say, and also take a look at the CX-5.